Hello everyone, this is Professor Hasselman again, and this is History 104, and in this lecture we're going to be talking about Byzantium and the birth of Byzantium. Now, the second of heirs Rome, or Rome's heirs, is Byzantium. And as the Western Roman Empire evolved into a series of kingdoms in the 5th century, the Eastern Empire persisted. Fewer and less accurate frontier problems challenged the rulers. And generally, the Eastern rulers were more skillful and competent. The East was more prosperous, urbanized, and intellectually cultivated. But there were deep religious divisions because of large monophysite communities. No one in the 5th century thought of the empire based on Constantinople as anything but Roman. Only in hindsight can we see that the two cultural realms were drifting apart. And again, this is the difference between the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. East Rome, in the age of Justinian, provides some hints of the new directions. Justinian waged wars against the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, and the Visigoths in an attempt, vain as it turned out, to recover Rome's lost western provinces. We today can see that Constantinople's sphere of influence was effectively reduced to the east. The imperial administration and finances were massively reformed in the first such comprehensive undertaking since Diocletian. We today can see that a new kind of regime with an even less civilian character was beginning to emerge. Now, Justinian issued the Corpus Iuris Civilis, in Latin, as a major analysis, organization, and updating of Roman law, but it had to be translated into Greek to be useful. We can see that Roman would not mean Latin. Now, the Ecumenical Council of 553 was called to attempt to deal with monophysitism, and Rome and the Western bishops were largely ignored. We can see that the East was going its own way in matters of theology. In building Hagia Sophia, Justinian created a church that made nods in the direction of traditional Roman architecture, but that was, on balance, something new. We can see the evolution of East Rome. If we fast forward to East Rome in the age of Heraclius, we can see an accentuation of the changes evident in the age of Justinian. The military policies of the Roman state were now oriented differently. Wars against Persians and Muslims showed that the eastern frontier was critical, and wars in the Balkans against Slavs and Bulgars showed that the northern frontier was critical. Little attention was paid to the west, apart from Italy, none at all. Now, Heraclius laid the beginnings of the Theme system. Soldiers were settled on the land and led in local contingents of military officers who answered up to a hierarchy, to strategoi. These were no longer citizen soldiers recruited and trained by the state and paid out of tax revenue. The system continued to evolve for centuries and was a natural extension of the increasing combination of civil and military authority in the hands of individual officials. Heraclius and his successors called themselves Basileus ton Romaion, and this means Emperor of the Romans. Now that's traditional enough, but they did so in Greek, not Latin. Official acts were rarely used in Latin any longer. Byzantium in the age of Leo III and Constantine V, the Isaurian dynasty, shows the degree to which changes had seated themselves permanently. Wars were fought exclusively in Anatolia, or Turkey, and the Balkans. Italy was no more than a source of conflicts with Italians and popes. Elaboration of the Theme system continued unabated. Leo III issued a new law code, the Egloka, which that was deliberately a summary of the Corpus Iuris Civilis. Distinctive religious customs now marked sharp differences between East and West, and it's possible to speak of Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic, though as yet neither side admitted or desired a rupture. Byzantine priests could marry. The Byzantine Church used leavened bread in the Eucharist. Byzantine monks were tonsured differently than those of the West. Icons, despite a harsh but short-lived reaction against them, came to play a critical role in worship. And it seems safe to say that we can now speak of Byzantium and Byzantine, although they continued to say Roman. In 867, with Basil I, the Byzantines got a new dynasty of rulers, the Macedonians. They tended to be capable soldiers who secured the northern Balkans and, for a time, even rolled back the Muslims' advance into Anatolia. They practiced clever missionary and diplomatic policies that won Eastern Europe and incipient Russia for orthodoxy. And they promoted learning, but always in Greek and in continuation of the Greek tradition. And we also see in Byzantium a universal faith, a new chosen people, a foundational holy book, and an orientation towards classical culture. So this is the end of today's quick lecture on the rise of Byzantium and the birth of Byzantium in the East. When we meet again next week, we'll be continuing talking about what was going on in the West and the development of the kingdoms in the West and the eventual arrival of Charlemagne in what we would call the medieval period.